All right, I got my S4 on the lift, 2016. Today we're doing a big brake kit because the factory brakes on these are single piston, and I always dislike that about this car. So I did a budget big brake kit. All right, here's all the stuff that I've pieced together over the last week or two. These are B9 calipers, and these are B9 caliper, A6 3.0T rotor. Make sure they are the 356 millimeter. So you're going like 11 millimeters bigger than the factory S4 front rotor is a 345. So you do get a bigger diameter rotor. 6 piston calipers, B9. Brembo pads, Stop Tech DOT lines. I had to get some spacers, some bolts, and I got some Motul fluid. And I'm going to go over the prices of all this stuff. All right, these rotors, these are SB Performance. They're based out of Cincinnati. It says Made in America. I got those off eBay for 260 bucks. I got a pair of them, as you can see. So we're going to try those out. The calipers are off a 2020 S4. I got them off eBay for about $500. The car had 14,000 miles on it, so they're still in really good shape. I'm going to clean them up, maybe put some ceramic coating on them and be done with that. Stop Tech pads, Stop Tech lines were $55 on Amazon. The Brembo pads were $70 on Amazon. The Motul fluid was $36 on Amazon. I got the spacers off Amazon. They're 1/2 inch thick, and the inside diameter is 1/2 inch as well, so pretty easy to remember. The spacers are $17. The bolts and the washers were $29, and that's pretty much it for the whole setup. I plan on flushing my brakes. I'm also gonna do the oil change and tire rotation and a couple other things on my car, but all this stuff together costs 967 bucks. And if you're in the market for big brakes, you know that big brake kits can go all the way up to $5,000 or more. I was personally looking at the D2 8 piston kit. It's about 1,800 bucks, and they may, depending on what size you get, you can get a $2,500 kit that has 380 millimeter rotors. Anyway, I've been researching brakes for about a year on what I wanted to do, and the OEM B9 calipers with this setup is definitely one of the cheapest and nicest you can get. For under $1,000, I feel like it's pretty damn good. Considering if you buy good pads and rotors for the front of your stock setup, you're going to be $500 into that. So this setup is under $1,000, and everything is pretty name brand, Motul, Brembo, Stop Tech. Everything's pretty on par. So as far as the hardware goes, these are the spacers. I got the bolts from Ace Hardware, grade 10. Make sure you get a high quality bolt. These parts bolt to your knuckle. You do have to do a little bit of grinding, but I'll show you how to do that. The spacer goes in between the bracket and this. So if you see this one doesn't have a spacer, this one does. It's going to look something like that. I use this Craftsman kit with the 14 millimeter extractor, shaped like that. I hammered it on the old bolts and got them right off there, off of this caliper here. So this is the factory Audi bolt. It's a funny proprietary bolt. So it is M12 by 1.25. Just take this to Ace Hardware, get a high grade high grade grade 10, and make sure it's a 1/2 inch longer to make up for your spacer. Some people don't like the spacer idea, and I completely understand that. I've done a lot of research, and there was a guy on one of the forums, he was tracking his car with this setup, and he didn't have any problems. Just make sure to get high quality hardware, and I think you'll be okay. So just, if you don't like it, I understand. I'm going to run it. I think it's okay as long as you torque the bolts down proper and use high grade hardware. I don't see any issues with this. Now if you see, my brake rotors are pretty beat. They got grooves in them and stuff. Get a little lip on the edge, nothing crazy, but they need to go. So the first thing you do is take off the wheels. Okay, I got my wheel off. This bolt right here is a T30. Got my little quarter drive T30, and I'm taking the bracket off for, let me get some light on here for you. So this bolt right here, that's like a 13. That's what holds the caliper to the bracket. I'm going for the big boy right here. So I'll just take this whole caliper and bracket assembly off and put it on Facebook Marketplace for some A4 owner who I'm sure might want them. So that's what I'm doing now. Okay, I got the caliper with bracket off. I got the rotor off. I'm taking this shield off. You can choose to discard this shield or trim it. I'm going to choose to trim it. So I'm probably going to trim pretty close to here and up here to get everything to work out, but I'll revisit that here in a minute. All right, so I got the B9 bracket factory bolts that came off the factory calipers. If you look, this hole isn't lining up quite right, so this needs to be clearanced just a little bit. I'm gonna use a grinder with a flap disc, and I'm gonna buzz this down just a little bit and see how she does. All right, just for size comparison, this is my old rotor, and you can see that the new one is a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit thicker. But either way, this thing had a big groove on the inside of it, big lip. So, and if you look, I had to beat it with a hammer to get it off. It was stuck. So, that's that. Okay, so I did some grinding. Pretty much this flat spot on the back, that needed a lot to go. And then I did a little bit here. I used my grinder with my flap disc. Took me a couple minutes. Now the B9 bracket bolts right on. All right, I got the B9 bracket bolted on with the factory B8.5 bolts. Now you can kind of get an idea of where this heat shield can mount and how much needs to be trimmed off of it. So I'm gonna do that next. All right, I trimmed the heat shield, put the 4 bolts back in it. B9 bracket is on. That's about how much I took off of the heat shield on one side, and then there's some smaller pieces. Oh, there's another piece over here. I just used some 10 snips, nothing fancy. Cut it up nice. Made sure to make it look somewhat okay. And now I'm gonna throw the rotor on, secure it with the little bolt that goes here, and we'll start mocking up the caliper. All right, got the rotor bolted on. It doesn't interfere with anything so far, so we're gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna throw the caliper on. I don't have any pads in it or anything. I'm just gonna mock it up. All right, so I got the caliper bolted on. My spacers, it does seem to be rubbing. You can hear it just a tiny bit, so I might grind the caliper just a touch. You could also put a washer on your spacers and space the caliper out just a hair. But when I see people do that, the inside of the rotor doesn't get surface. And I feel like your pad hangs off the edge over here. So I'm opting to grind the rotor or the caliper just a hair. But this is it mocked up. There's no pads, there's no lines, obviously. I still have my caliper hanging up there. I'm gonna throw my wheel on to make sure it's gonna clear. I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't know. So I'm gonna do that real quick and then break it all down and do the lines, pads, make what adjustments I need to make, and then we'll do the other side. And then I'm gonna get my tires rebalanced because I feel like there's a shimmy, rotate the tires, and then we will flush the brake system and bed these in. And I'll do some glamour shots when the car's back on the ground. And that's pretty much it. All right, so I threw the wheel on just to check, and man, we got space, but whoa, it's pretty close. It doesn't rub. So I think we're good. But man, I was worried when I was putting the wheel on. I was worried. But I do like the S logo. It kind of goes with my car, and it's a nice upgrade. I'm happy with the way it looks. I set it on the ground real quick. Definitely looks a lot better than the stalkers. So I took the caliper off, and it looks like it's only rubbing like right here. Barely. Maybe a little bit right here. And then I put the brake line on. This is a B8 brake line, but so if you look close, you can see where it was barely rubbing right here. Barely. And I think I think it's barely rubbing right here. And maybe right here, you can see a little bit of dust. So I'm going to file this down a little bit. All right, so I took my little file here and I just barely, not even barely anything. So I'm gonna throw it on there and see if it clears. So the noise is gone, and it wasn't that. It was actually just these little clips. I just barely bent this little clip. If you look, there's a line dragging right here. And this little clip was touching. And I just bent it out. It was touching on the bottom too. So now we got no drags, no noise, smooth sailing. So I'm gonna throw the pads on and get this thing going. All right, loading these Brembo pads in. I use this ceramic brake part lubricant on the ears and helps it to not squeak. All right, got the brakes on. Pads line up pretty perfectly, so that's nice. The clips that rub actually get pushed back with the pads when you put them on, so don't worry about that. Clearances are good. I got my brake line threaded in. This is a B8 brake line. I'm about to swap it and get rid of this B8 caliper, give it to some A4 buyer, because I'm sure this is an upgrade for them. And that's it. Also, a quick reminder, when you put your calipers on, make sure your bleeding nipples are facing up. If they're not facing up, your brakes don't bleed. You'll be here all day. All right, the caliper's bolted on. Got the line installed. It has this little clip. Make sure to use that. It makes things a little easier. Everything fits real good. Little grommet here, isolator. And I'm gonna do the other side. I won't video the other side because it's pretty much the same thing, except for I think the other side's gonna have a brake wear sensor, but you can figure that out. And moving on. All right, so this is the brake sensor on the B8 caliper. I took off of here. Mine is stuck, it like melted. I was almost, you see it started breaking. I was almost ready for pads. These are done anyway. So I did this at the right time. So I'm just gonna buy a new sensor and it should clip on to the B9 pads with the connector. But I tried to salvage this one, but it's just junk. So throw that away and get a new one. I got a new brake wear sensor, so it wouldn't trigger the light on my dash. So I'm gonna throw that on and then the wheels go on. All right, I bedded them in a little bit. It looks like it's still working its way to rubbing the full rotor because it's still got the coating on there, but it's starting to come off. So I'm gonna take it on a drive out to my brother's house and see how she does. So far it stops pretty good. I just cleaned these wheels and all the bedding material is coming off. You can see all the material, but that's just the coating. So hopefully we're good to go.